Welcome, everybody, to an amazing version of Digital Divas, the podcast. I'm here with Heléne Smuts. Heléne, you are quite a remarkable human being. First of all, you are jet lagged today. You've arrived just from the United States. Tell me what you were doing there first. Let's start there.
So I've been there for a month now and just got back yesterday. And on Friday, I ended off my tour with an amazing workshop for EO Atlanta.
Amazing.
Where it was really about developing leaders to be high-performing leaders. And yeah, that was amazing. I was expecting 20 people and 65 rocked up. So
Did you just love it when that happens?
Caught off guard a little bit. But and then the 3 weeks before that, I spent with a client. They take me over once or twice a year to really go and develop high-performing teams and work with them to increase their culture.
Amazing. So this is what you do at Credo Growth?
That's correct, yeah.
Tell us a bit about Credo Growth.
So it's what we call a growth consultancy. Yeah, the trendy word these days. But we really focus on making sure that we develop cultures, leaders, and people within organizations.
Okay.
High-functioning, high-performing cultures. Then we also focus on strategic thinking and execution planning, because very often you're good at the one and not so good at the execution or vice versa. And then the third leg of Credo Growth is the sales training and sales consulting. So it really is all about what you need to focus on in order to grow your business.
Okay,
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like everybody should do it, right?
I hope so.
Can everybody be a leader?
That is a very good question. I don't think everybody should be a leader.
Or wants to be, maybe, right?
Yeah, exactly, or wants to be. We see, especially in the manufacturing and the tech space, that what they start doing is they promote their best performing people who's currently brilliant at their roles.
Mm-hmm.
And now all of a sudden they move to the next position and they go, but all I wanted to do was code. Why on
Right.
earth must I now sit here and worry about someone's leave?
Or Excel spreadsheets.
Or
which
reports, exactly.
I personally am allergic to. Excuse me. But you would know the answer to that question because you actually have a background in behavioral psychology and industrial psychology. I mean, how has this expertise actually shaped this coaching and team development that you're so damn good at right now?
Yeah. I think just the fundamental understanding around how people play games with one another, the insecurities and what we do when those insecurities show up, that gives me an idea of the nuances in the room. And I think that shapes how I then handle the room. And then together with my quite direct personality and wanting to get to the crux of the issue and not beat around the bush, that helps in the space of coaching and team development.
Okay.
Because that means you can really bullseye the challenge and then start working from there, which I think is a very useful tool.
I suppose the backbone of all sort of psychology is like getting to the root of the problem.
Yeah, and not dance around it, which is what most people do. They're too worried to go to the actual core, because that means you have to have tough conversations. That means you have to be vulnerable. And not many people want to do that.
And do the work, as they say.
Yeah.
Do you prefer one-on-ones or working in entire teams?
That is fascinating. So I get exhausted by one-on-ones.
As I'm sure most psychologists do.
but give me a group, give me 65 people and I get energized.
Yeah?
Where so many other people, they get exhausted by a group of people and they get energy from one-on-one.
Wow.
Put it down to extroversion, introversion, although my introversion is quite high. But I do find that if I can see how the group is interacting with one another and like struggling with a scenario and sometimes even tears and like having words because they need to say things that they haven't been able to say, that gives me energy to see how I don't want to say break the group down, but to see how the group can accept the core issue. And then we start building from there. That for me is amazing.
Amazing. Well, lucky for us, at the Digital Divas Summit, there's about 150 women in the room. And you are giving us your keynote called Grow Your Motivation, Ditch Mediocrity.
That's it.
What would you say is a mediocre worker?
I have so many things to say. I think for me personally is when someone is not willing to go out of their comfort zone, everything always has to be exactly the same. So the moment there's a little bit of change, they find every single reason as to why not to change. That for me is a first initial sign. Then something else, which also is probably one of my pet peeves, is justifying, laying blame, making excuses.
That happens a lot.
The yes but attitude. So in there, for me, also comes mediocrity. And then another one is if you are not able to acknowledge that you have blind spots, and if you don't want to accept feedback, if you're not wanting to lean into tough conversations, all of those things there's just signs for me to say you are not willing to actually try and get better, to try and grow.
Right.
You might not grow as fast as someone else, and that's absolutely fine, but it's that willingness to do that.
Right.
The ability to go open-minded into something and say, let's see how I can challenge myself.
Right.
You don't have to do it the way someone else does it,
Right.
because we're all different.
So, I mean, when people employ you to teach their teams how to, to be leaders, is it more like you teach them to be better instead of just, thinking that, do people want to be their people to be leaders, or do they want them just to work in a cohesive team? I mean, it seems like an obvious answer, but in your experience, what is it that they want, and is that a realistic want?
I think there's actually more than one need that they have when they ask some of our facilitators to go into a session. And the one is, yes, come and develop our leaders, because we have put people in leadership and management positions, yet they have never had training on how to do it. So that's the one aspect of it. But then another aspect which we feel strongly about is don't only focus on your leaders. What about the people that have to report into these leaders? So we call it followership. So it's about how, like the art of followership, if you want.
I love that.
Justin King, who's also part of our
Copyright?
business. Yeah, he often speaks about that, one of our partners at Credo. But so it's developing leaders, it's developing followers. And funny, what happens is when you develop the people that report into leaders and you give them the understanding of what the skill of leadership and management is, all of a sudden they're understanding why my manager is starting to do a one-on-one with me, why my manager is sometimes delegating and managing in a very specific way. So it's equipping everyone in the business to understand what is needed to grow and scale the business. So it's leadership development, it's skills for people who are not leaders, but they might have to, if you think about it, followership is you a leader without a title. You still have to lead in a group sometimes or a project. You still have influence as a team member.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's kind of...
Well, I mean, you're clearly knowledgeable, and I mean, you have actually written a book called Ditch Mediocrity. What motivated you to write? Did you just have like a whole bunch of stuff and you're like, I just put it in a book? Or did you feel like, what was the reason for writing this book?
Yeah, so I did in COVID, I created
I just love COVID. Everybody just did something completely left field.
And I cannot write to save my life. It's really hard. But I created an online course, and then my mentor at the time was like, why are you sitting with all this information? You're supposed to put it somewhere so that other people can access it. And not because I'm great or anything, it's just because of all the training that I've done and all the research and all of those things. And then my husband, together with my husband and my mentor, I just realized I'm not going to get out of this one. So I turned that into a book, which was...
That's amazing. Where can we find it? Is it online or is it in exclusives?
It's on Takealot, Barnes & Nobles, as well as Amazon. But for South Africa version, it's obviously Takealot, which is the easiest way.
Amazing. Look out for it, everybody. Ditch Mediocrity by Heléne Smuts. You have an obsession with high performance, it says here.
You didn't gather that?
What are some common traits or behaviors you've observed in high-performing individuals and teams?
Let me think about it. I think the first one is definitely that willingness, and I spoke about it a little bit earlier, that willingness to do something that is uncomfortable. The ability to, you and I spoke a little bit earlier around that, the feedback. The willingness to give feedback to people, but also the willingness to be open to receiving feedback, even if it is redirective, tough feedback, critical feedback, whatever you want to call it, and not necessarily push away from that, but really taking that on board. So that's the one thing, is tough conversations, feedback, the ability to go vulnerable. I'm not saying share your deepest, darkest secrets, but vulnerability in terms of, I also made a mistake. I need help. I'm out of my depth. So that kind of conversations. And I think something maybe a little bit different is where people aren't so hung up, and people might disagree with me here, but people aren't so hung up on work-life balance.
Yeah.
But rather realizing that, you know what, sometimes I have to put way more effort into getting to scale my business, and I'm going to reap the rewards a little bit later.
Yeah.
Or today my family comes first because something is going on, and then it means for the next weekend I need to grind.
Right.
So, and I have a very fundamental belief that it should be work-life integration and not balance, because balance means you have to give something up in order to have everything equal.
Yeah.
And what I've seen in people who are really high-performing and growing their businesses, and high-performing in life as well, it is about understanding that sometimes some things has to give a little and be okay with that.
I really like that because actually, I totally agree. There's that 5 a.m. club thing. I don't know if you're part of the 5 a.m. club.
No, I'm not. I'm 5:30 most, but I've got twin girls. It's their fault.
For sure. But I mean, the idea is that everybody, you'll be a much more high functioning individual if you wake up at 5 a.m. And then there's like the people going, I found it hard at first. And I'm like, why are you torturing yourself? You don't have to wake up at 5 a.m., And that's kind of the same thing. Yeah. It's like, no, it's got to be a work-life balance. I got to drink tequila now because it's Friday.
Well, you have to drink tequila.
You gotta, yeah. Oh, sorry, that was a bad example. Sorry about that. Okay, well, let's talk about men versus women leaders.
Ooh, digital divas, here we come.
Here we come. Tell us about your professional opinion about in your experience as well, about the difference that you've noticed between them.
I think, I think both men and women can be incredible leaders and are incredible leaders. And I certainly, mentors in my life have been men predominantly, and they have been incredible.
Fair.
What I do find is that often female, and not everyone, but very often what females do is they work so hard at assertiveness that they sometimes push over the line and become too assertive. And that is not necessarily only on the female side. It's probably because, from what I've seen in teams, that they are also being pushed, and the boundaries are being shifted the whole time. So,
is this by society or by the team itself?
By the team itself.
Okay.
So it's...
Oh, because you're a woman, and it's gender equality, so you should do better.
Exactly.
Wow.
So it's not only the woman that says that wants to assert herself and now she goes over the boundary, but there's a whole different variety of things that come into play.
Interesting.
But I do think that if you're a male, it's about tapping into the feminine side as well as from leadership, and vice versa. If you're a female, tap into the masculine side of leadership.
Yeah.
Because both are required. And we speak about situational leadership in terms of different modes of how we lead. But I also think we should speak about the different energies in leadership and what is needed in certain spaces.
Are you speaking about it in a traditional sense where female qualities are to be more nurturing, or is that what you mean, or?
No, because I think there are many male leaders that I've seen that are also very nurturing, more nurturing than what I am. That's for sure. But I think it's more in the kind of maybe in a different way of thinking, because there's sometimes the male leaders do have a very stereotyping now, might have a very thinking way that they make decisions. They base it based on thinking, where sometimes stereotyping on the female side, they might think a little bit more around, hold on, if I make this decision, what is the impact going to be on the people? So it might be more on the emotive side. And that for me is why I'm saying both are needed if we want to classify it in terms of masculine and feminine. But I think these days, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying gender equality is at an all-time perfect scenario, but I'm seeing more and more females stepping up and really owning it.
Nice.
And stepping into their power and loving it. And it's so awesome to see when that is actually at play, and when the male leaders are actually learning from female and female from the males.
That is amazing. Yeah. I love that. Have you ever met a problem that you couldn't solve, and what was it?
Have I met a problem that I couldn't solve?
I mean, obviously in terms of team dynamics or,
Yeah.
trying to, turn a leader around or something like that. And what happens after that?
Not so long ago, eventually it got solved, but we had to do another intervention with the team. But I did an activity which I knew is going to challenge the team, and things are going to come up that should come up because everyone was tiptoeing around it.
Uh-huh.
And in that session, what happened is the person was explaining what she did on her flip chart paper, and that, they started shouting at each other. The one girl ran out of the room. She didn't want to come back.
Scandal.
But that's what happens, and that is if a team is in such dynamics of not being able to work together, you have to get to that point so that you can start building it up. Of course, my legs were shaking. I'm like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? But that was the best thing that could have happened for that team.
Yeah.
And then eventually we got her back in the room. We didn't solve the problem. I twisted the roadmap a little.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened is that created a space for me and the two people in the room to start a mediation journey. And that team is now, they're now amazing. They're doing so well. They're in Pretoria. But it took a while, and in that moment, that was an issue.
Yeah.
But there's been coaching scenarios, one-on-one coaching scenarios, where some people they are forced to sign up to coaching, and you're wondering, and the contracting is like, I can't make them change.
Yeah.
I can't force them to implement the actions.
It's kind of like an addict or something, or like someone who just refuses, to believe that they have a mental illness.
Yeah.
I'm going back to the psychology part of
Yeah.
it. And, so it's obviously stubbornness and I know better and all that.
And it's
that must be tough.
Someone who's not willing to accept their blind spot. And then it is, it's unfortunate. And hopefully there's a small portion of the world who is like that, who's uncoachable. But I have had that where the journey ends.
So when you just look at them and you go, you putz.
Actually, I would love to do that. But what I do is I go, you idiot. Me, as in me. Like, why could you not have done something?
But I think I wouldn't, you have such a humongous success stories. Like, I think that some people are just stubborn and that's the end of that.
Or it might also be that the person would have done well with a bit of a different coach. And what I mean by that is let me tell a story. So Initially, I wanted a mentor many years ago. I said, I need a mentor who's like me. They are straight to the point. They don't take any BS. They execute us and all of those things. And I identified a mentor, and I'm like, I want that guy, that specific guy. I didn't really know him. I just knew his business, and he was part of EO. And then we had our first mentor session, and he was a teddy bear. He had the heart of gold, and he was so caring and nurturing. And I'm like,
where's my nutcracker?
Yeah, exactly. And it's exactly what I needed. I needed that. So you asked earlier about the masculine. Mm-hmm. He had that utter nurturing compassion about him. And it's exactly what I needed.
That's amazing.
So sometimes it might also be that the coach was not the right coach for the person.
Very interesting.
So, yeah.
Do you know what else is amazing, though, is that not only are you this remarkable global traveling person, but you also are a mom of twin girls.
That's right.
Who are now 9 years old. But you also like diving and traveling and mountain climbing and all that kind of stuff. Where on earth do you find the time, and how do you balance your own time, Heléne?
I think because those things are fundamental to who I am and my marriage with my husband. So we do those things together. It comes naturally to us to make the time. And it's easy to say to make the time, but because it's one of our priorities, that's what we do.
Right. And you enjoy.
And I love it. Exactly. Diving is my form of meditation. Free diving, if I go down under that water, it is just, I can hang, I obviously have to come up for air again. But it's just exquisitely beautiful. We always dive in a kelp forest. And the best part is my girls come with me.
Oh,
So
that's
I'm
amazing.
teaching them how to rock climb. We're teaching them how to dive, teaching them how to surf,
How to
boogie
tolerate
board.
freezing cold water.
Yeah, it's wetsuits, man. That's
I'm just kidding.
yeah.
I do like diving as well. I don't do free diving, but I have done scuba diving, and the kelp
It's
forests are actually
gorgeous.
magic.
Yeah.
So I don't blame you. And underneath the sea, I suppose you do find this wonderful serenity
Yeah, absolutely.
out of all the noise that is happening. Okay, Digital Divas. I mean, are we excited or what? 23rd of August, Heléne Smuts is coming to show you how to not be mediocre anymore. What are the key takeaways that the divas are going to walk away from after your keynote?
I think the main thing is to understand how your own personal motivation works. And for a founder or a leader of people, it's what can you do in order to create an environment so that you can push the responsibility back to individuals so that they can show up motivated.
Oh, I love that.
So, because these days, what I see in South Africa and everywhere else in the world is everyone is sitting there waiting to be motivated. And I'm tired of seeing that. It's like, take control of your own motivation, show up and help your leaders in order to create environments so that you can stay motivated, and for the leaders to show up to create an environment for them. So that's kind of my mission.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Heléne, thank you so much for coming into studio at Innovation City today. Guys, there's a few tickets left for Digital Divas. Go online, innovationcity.co.za/Digital Divas. Buy your ticket now, or you're going to get to miss out on this remarkable young lady over here. Heléne, thank you very much.
Thank you. Cheers.